Sealing burr plaster or miscoating burr plaster. Do you use paint or do you use PVA? I'm going to shed some light and dispel some myths. So starting with this one, this you would thin 5 parts paint and 1 part water. Again, with this one you would thin by 10%, this one by 10%. This one, it says use the primer undercoat for sealing burr plaster. So both of these are scrubbable. This is a contract mat, which is ideal for new work, and this is just your run-of-the-mill vinyl mat. These two are silk, and with these, again with this silk, it does say use the primer undercoat to seal the plaster. And with this one down here, it does also say seal new plaster with the plaster sealer. On this one, very porous surfaces, it says seal with the plaster sealer. But this and this, they're both scrubbable. But that says use the primer undercoat. Okay, so back to the silk. If you were sealing plaster, then you'd have to go and buy the primer undercoat. But the main reason, this being silk is a bit like PVA in makeup. As in, if you were to put this on the wall neat, your burr plaster, it would form a skin. It wouldn't absorb into the surface. But all these paints carry pigment. So if you were to thin this off to what you would need, it would be a heck of a mess. It carries pigment again. Yeah? So, going back to this one, this, being a contract mat, is your ordinary non-vinyl mat. Right, so again, these are scrubbable mat. So they won't take water, they'll both repel water. This one won't. So you move into a new build property and something like this may have been used on the walls and it gets really dirty very quick and doesn't repel water, as in I get my damp cloth and just put it on the surface there. You can see straight away that's absorbed the water. Alright, so again, going back to mist coating your paints, they carry a pigment which you need to be able to absorb into the plaster as well. So that's why you would thin them off. Not easy with this one because this is silk. Again, they all carry pigment, but you wouldn't be able to thin this off to do what you want. You move into your new build property and it's magnolia all over. It's already been sealed, it's already been finished. If it's been sealed correctly using their method, there won't be a problem. If you want to change because it's gone grubby and horrible and you want to put some silk on, it's already been sealed, so you won't need any primers or sealers. Meaning that any one of these paints you can use to seal your plaster if you have any about. You don't have to use a sealer or primer. It's generally all down to paint manufacturers wanting to sell their product. So, if I had a chimney breast, say that I was wanting to paint new plaster and I was picking it out in a certain colour, then if I do it their way, then I buy an extra tin of paint, because I'll need to thin some off and then I won't have enough to finish my project because I've got what I needed. So again, you'd have to buy another one, or buy the separate plaster sealer if you go by their recommendation, because these recommend their primer undercoat. So you have to double up on paint. Well, basically, it's down to how the paint absorbs into the plaster, because even the primer undercoat that they recommend here, you would have to thin to absorb into your plasterwork. So now, PVA. It's cheap and it works just as well as any one of these or the recommended sealers, primers. Now, this stuff, what you don't want to be doing with this is using it neat out the bottle. You can't put this into a paint can and then start to apply it to your wall. That is wrong. It's as wrong as putting that on neat onto the wall. You have to thin it off so it's virtually like water, so it soaks in to the plaster. Never wants to sit on the surface. And you won't have a problem with this going on your plaster, believe me. We have a video already uploaded that roughly around 3 years ago I completed a job which I used PVA to seal all the ceilings and all the walls, and believe me, it was a big place. I must have used somewhere in the region of about, I'd say about 110, 120 litres of paint. So these are a 10 litre. So I easily must have used anywhere up to 10, 15 of these. So like 150 litres possibly. But if I had to mist coat with the product, then the amount of paint and expense would have just been crazy. So it was Fortress matte that I used on the ceilings and walls. On the ceilings actually, it was a different product on the walls. But I used the PVA and then 2 coats of the vinyl matte from Fortress, pure brilliant white. And only a couple of weeks ago, a few weeks back, I got a phone call asking me if I could pop down and have a look at the ceiling, because they'd had a leak and the ceiling had stained. There was no problem with the ceiling whatsoever. Paint was still on the ceiling, everything was fine. There was a watermark on the ceiling which I had to seal with a stain block. So as for this stuff getting wet, reworking, No, it's a glue, so straight away it's bonded. And again, it doesn't sit on the surface, it absorbs into the plasterwork. So like I say, there is a video uploaded, and that's never been a problem. It was just, again, saving on the expense of buying so much paint. As well as saving on paint, it saves on time, because each one of these will recommend thinning it off and applying it so your plaster's sealed. But then you're going to have to wait 2 to 4 hours, depending, for it to dry, before then you put your recommended 2 coats on. And with this, I can apply it and literally within the hour, certainly within an hour and a half, you can be applying your first coat of paint, which technically you only need to apply 2 coats because it's already been sealed. If you're using a reasonable emulsion paint with good coverage, then you'll get away with 2 coats. If your paint is expensive and you've only a certain amount, you'll get away with only buying what you need. You won't have to buy extra to thin off. I'm ready for mixing this PVA up now. So I've got just a bit more than 4 litres of cold water in this bucket. So I already have some PVA open. So I'm just going to add it now. And that's it. That's probably a good egg cupful. So what, anywhere between 50 and 100 ml maybe. And that is all you want, that is all you need. So just give it a thorough mix up. Now when you're using paint to seal plaster, like again with it carrying pigment, if you apply the paint in very warm conditions and neat, then the paint dries quicker than it can absorb into the plaster. So by using this thin PVA, you save on paint, and when you start to apply your final coats of paint, so your first and second coat, then it will bond with the plaster and you won't have any problems with it. But what you will do is save a lot of paint. This will literally do your average room size. So what, say anywhere between 12 by 9 with say 7 or 8 foot up to your ceiling, maybe including your ceiling. You might have to mix a bit more, but it does go a long way. But when you use this, you really do have to make sure that you wipe it off any woodwork. And also, while I'm saying woodwork, never use this for priming bare wood. I wouldn't bother priming bare wood. If I was papering it, then you probably could put a thin coat like this, let it go off, and then paper it. Just set that to one side. Now, we'll talk about PVA being reworkable. Then it possibly would soften back to glue state. But some of these paints, especially this one, will soften as well. Now this is a contract mat, which is ideal for new work, so new plaster. Now, with it absorbing water, I'm just going to wipe the cloth on this and then see on the cloth there, it's just reworked. So that's why these are a non-washable paint. So I've got my board back again and I've created a couple of holes and then filled them with ordinary powder filler and with just cold water, nothing else in, just cold water, and they're both the same. So what I'm going to do is coat this one side with this diluted PVA, because when I do talk about a thin coated PVA, then it's really, I should be saying a thinned coat. So this is diluted now. Okay, that's it. If you do ever get any runs coming down, just wipe them off. Now as this dries back, once it's dry, I'll give both sides a coat of emulsion and then we'll just see how the emulsion is absorbed into these areas of filler. So this is dry now. Remember, coated with PVA. That's okay. Now, I've got my thin emulsion here. So just have a look at this, see how thin this is. Up there, see? I'll just roll this on. So I'll just put a roller. I'll let that dry and just see how that absorbs in. See how thin this is. It's not over thin, just what you would need. But if you were mist coating or sealing your plaster, then using a roller, this is only a mini roller, you would get a lot of spray. So you would have to go around and wipe the woodwork anyway. And you would be covered in it. But applying PVA with a brush doesn't leave any brush marks and it just absorbs straight into the plaster when thinned out. There's two areas on this board now where the emulsion is slightly flashing. One just there and the other one is just there. So then that means that that paint has absorbed into both of those areas. So with these both slightly flashing, and that means that the paint has absorbed in and it's dried back. So on this side, the damp cloth, just see if this works up. No. I'll just... because this is a scrubbable emulsion. So then on this one, no, there's actually bits of my cloth starting to come off. There's nothing there. So, unless you get a leak which will wet the plaster from behind, then there's no moisture going this way.